All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Darren Fink with Transfiguring Adoption. Transfiguring Adoption is a 501c tax-exempt organization, and we exist to nurture and grow foster and adoptive families by giving a hoot about their families. So we are getting going here. I'm giving a chance for everyone to get into the chat room here. I see Margie and Leigh Anne in here. Leigh Anne's joining us on her desktop chatting, but she's also on here on the phone. She is. I'm gonna wait for some people to get in here. Hey, Kristen, glad to see you here. I'm gonna wait for some more people to get populated in here so we can introduce Leigh Anne and tell everyone a little bit more about her, so we don't have to do it 5 times. But I'll go ahead and tell the small jargon that I have to tell at the beginning. And again, my name is Darren Fink with Transfiguring Adoption. This is our Caregiver Check-In. We do it every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a time for us to get together and support one another as caregivers, foster parents, adoptive parents, professionals, people that are interested or just wanting to help out. This is a time for encouragement, for you to ask questions, for you to share advice. This is not a time for, this is not medical advice, it's not legal advice. We're not telling you to discover or encouraging you to go against your caseworkers or your agencies or anyone that professionals you're working with in your life. All that to say, please don't sue us. We are going to be talking about, some folks I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, have been asking about RAD and just how to parent their kiddos that have that and are struggling there. And it's really affects a lot of families. And we get asked that when we get into foster care and adoption circles. People ask Margie and I about that a lot because it's something that I think it just kind of throws people for a wallop, and it's not something traditional or something that people have grown up with or seen handled. And so we're really excited to have Leigh Anne Goldstine here, Leigh Anne Goldstine is the owner of the Built to Bond Attachment Institute out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And she is a wealth of information and knowledge on this. So, Leigh Anne, hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Fantastic. And Leigh Anne, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you add to the whole conversation of talking about reactive attachment?
Sure, thanks for having me. So, I first heard the term reactive attachment disorder in the early 90s when I worked in a residential treatment setting outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a relatively rare disorder at the time. And most people didn't really understand it. What I've come to learn over the years is that a lot of kids of trauma, a lot of kids with neglect, profound, just really experiences that have caused them not to form attachment correctly, have caused them to become reactive in the way in which they approach attachment with trusting caregivers.
Okay. And I'm waiting for some more folks to kind of populate in here because I know that there are a few folks in here that are wanting to jump in here on the conversation. And while everyone else that's in here right now that's kind of hanging out, if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead. This is that time that I usually tell everyone to go ahead and share on your Facebook profile page that you're watching, and that'll help alert people and remind people that we're doing this right now. And we tend to get a lot more folks in here. If I could see just by hitting the emojis that you guys have on there, we actually have Margie. She's not on video with me. She's actually on the computer. She's trying to field comments and stuff like that, because it seems like we've had a lot of comments lately, so she's trying to field all those. Margie, if you wouldn't mind putting up a question for if we can tell who had experience with parenting kids with RAD, whether that be now or in the past. Could we have it maybe like where people do the wow emoji icon if they are parenting kiddos right now with RAD, or maybe we could hit the like button if they've never had an experience with RAD. I'd just like to see where people are with that. Erin just joined in with us, and she said that her kiddo has RAD. So very cool. Well, Erin, I'll let you guys know that if you guys have any questions for Leigh Anne while she's on here, she's going to be talking some, but please jump in, ask any questions that you have, and let us know what you want to talk about. This is you guys' time, so we want to make sure that all of your questions are answered. Leigh Anne, can you tell us what, we were talking a little bit beforehand, what is RAD? What does that look like? How would you explain that to people? Like, where would you begin with talking with parents about RAD?
Well, I think that for the majority of people, RAD is a diagnosis that is really scary to folks because they oftentimes don't understand it, and people who coach them or do therapy with the child and family often see it as something that's to be feared. I oftentimes let people know that because I practice from a Christian perspective, that reactive attachment disorder is fixable, that we were all sinners to begin with, and without Christ, we would have been doomed to a terrible existence here and beyond. So really, love in action is the answer. And I try to talk with people about figuring out what the underlying need is for a particular kiddo so that they can understand what it is that the child is perceiving that they are not getting in terms of their emotional needs, so that we can best help the family guide them to meet those emotional needs.
Fantastic. So Erin was asking on here, are there different types of RAD? Like, what does it look like when we say RAD? People might think one blanketed term, but what are people talking about, or are there different types?
Well, I think children, I think what she may be referring to is that different children have different attachment styles. When they're experiencing reactive attachment disorder, they may be a child who is extremely clingy to the caregiver. There may be a child who is ambivalent about caregivers. There may be a child who wants attachment, but then they push the caregiver away when they attempt to connect with them.
Okay.
So it manifests itself in different ways with different children depending on their level of trauma and their personality.
So, and something that I'm hearing, we were watching, it's Autism Month, and I was watching the news before we came on here, and the news anchors were talking about a child that was going through a program for autism, and how this mom, she was saying that she has her daughter in this full-time program, and she's had her in it for years, and her daughter's finally able to communicate with her needs as opposed to just screaming for something. And she was just talking about, the mom was talking about how just encouraging and enriching and just easier things are now that her daughter can actually talk to her a little bit and communicate her needs to her. And I was talking to Margie right before this, and I said, that's something we take for granted, is being able to communicate with each other, until you have a child or someone that can't communicate the way we're used to, and then all of a sudden it throws things into chaos. Is there some of that with RAD where it's things that we might take for granted as we're thinking we're going to parent a traditional way, but it just doesn't work that way?
Absolutely, Darren. So I have a 21-year-old with Asperger's. Obviously, that's on the autism spectrum. And I've said for years that the Lord blessed me with a child with Asperger's because I'm not a foster or adopted parent, but Asperger's and autism oftentimes mirror attachment disorder, where the parent has to do a lot of really trying to figure out what the child is communicating. But with a RAD child, they do that through behaviors a lot of times, and you have to really be a detective and put on your detective hat to figure out what's the underlying emotional need that the child perceives is not being met, so that you can meet that need and decrease their anxiety level.
So what are some things that, I guess, how do we even know that we have, again, I'm going to let, some folks are coming in and out. We have some new folks that have joined in with us. We're talking about reactive attachment disorder. We have Leigh Anne Goldstine. She's the owner of Built to Bond Attachment Institute out of Knoxville, Tennessee, joining with us. And she's answering questions and chatting with us about this. I know that a lot of you guys wanted to ask questions or just talk about maybe different parenting techniques or different things like that. So please ask questions as they come up for you. Thank you, Aaron, for your question. How do you even know if you are dealing? Because I've heard some, I think within the last week or so, that RAD is being overdiagnosed. Is that true? Like, how do we know that our child, like, how do we know this is something that we're dealing with?
That's an interesting question, because I would have said that RAD is actually underdiagnosed. I think that many children of trauma and early found neglect experience much difficulty in their ability to successfully attach to people, and the behaviors are what gets paid attention to. So what happens is people look at diagnosing them with conduct disorder or bipolar disorder or all kinds of other issues such as ADHD and so forth, when the underlying issue is that they've not been successfully guided through the process. They develop secure trust with their caregiver, and that's what drives these disturbing behaviors. One of the principles I found the company on is that all behavior is a message. If you only pay attention to behavior, you get the message. And many programs that children go into, whether counseling, whatever, they're behaviorally based, and they look at the child's lying, crying, hitting their siblings, whatever, and they don't look at what's the reason behind that. And so what I try to do with people is teach them to look at how to go beyond behavior and look at what is the child trying to communicate, what are they in distress about.
So is that usually, I got a question that just popped up, but before I go to Aaron's question, I have Christina that says that they've parented a child with RAD, and unfortunately after 3 years, DCS kind of backed them into a corner and they had to walk away. Yeah, that's an unfortunate situation. Before I ask Aaron's question, is it hard for parents to learn how to see past the behaviors? What do you see normally?
Well, I think you can look at the laundry list of behaviors, and most of the things that parents get told, whether it's through the Department of Children's Services or other agencies, is what are the behaviors and trying to put a behavior plan in place. I would be curious to hear from Christina as to what they backed her into about which required them to walk away. Because a lot of times, even though the Department of Children's Services is supposed to understand trauma, they really don't understand how it affects the attachment process. They may understand about the fact that there is an attachment process, but they don't understand how to guide parents like Christina who are living every day with a child who does not respond to their repeated attempts to connect.
Right, and I think that might be another difficult part, even also with the public doesn't understand it either, and then so you have parents that are being looked down upon, or they're not doing something right out in the public also. Aaron's asking, what does RAD look like in adulthood?
Well, what I do is if the people who are listening, if they drew a circle on a piece of paper and they started and marked hash marks like a clock at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. At the 12 o'clock slot would be a need. Child has a need. The 3 o'clock slot would be a state of arousal where the child is signaling to the adult that they have a need. The 6 o'clock slot would be gratification where the adult meets the need, and the 9 o'clock slot is relaxation. And I draw an arrow through that to say that leads to trust. If you look at from 3 to 6 o'clock, I put an FFF in there when I explain it to people to say this is where the child is suffering, waiting for the adult to figure it out and fix it. Unfortunately, what happens is this cycle doesn't happen like it's supposed to in these traumatized, really neglected kids. And so if you draw another circle on the outside, the top part of 12 o'clock would say that these children consistently had caregivers who weren't attuned, didn't anticipate, didn't acknowledge, didn't appropriately meet the needs of the child. So then what happens at the 3 o'clock position is that the arousal turns into a state of hyperarousal for the child. And this is where the child is consistently anxious, angry, or afraid. So that's their internal state most of the time. And then at the 6 o'clock slot, that would be where they act. And then at the 9 o'clock slot, to alleviate all of those uncomfortable feelings. The problem is that alleviation doesn't equal relaxation. It's not the same thing. So when somebody asks me, what's that look like in an adult? This is a person who's consistently anxious, angry, and afraid. And what they're doing is taking control by using whatever their behavioral repertoire is to make themselves feel better, except it only does it in the moment. So if that's yelling at somebody, hitting somebody, stealing, lying, cursing somebody out, whatever that is. And if you look at reality TV, you see lots of examples of people who I would diagnose as having attachment challenges.
Is that because of their acting out?
Right, because what they're doing is that they're demonstrating that they don't have any ability to regulate their emotions. Someone makes them mad, and then they just decide that it's okay for me to scream and yell at you and hit you and curse you or say something that doesn't belong to me.
Right. Christina says that after multiple stays in a facility and having adopted his two siblings, they told, after multiple stays in a facility and having adopted his two siblings, they told us that we had to adopt him while in a facility that takes over $800 a day for the facility or walk away with no contact. He was in the facility for leaving bruises on me, putting holes in the wall, and threatening my life with, I just skipped up here. with a plan to kill me. We said he needed more help, but they would do no more. We have 5 other kids in our home, and he was starting to threaten them as well. So,
which is extremely sad. I'm reading that too, Darren, and it's extremely sad because they're not being able to understand the level of threat and terror this child is evoking in all the other family members.
right. And I feel like that's like you're talking about. I feel like that's I feel like the behavior is the only thing being looked at, but they're not looking at the underlying issues and the safety, really, of the family. Well, actually, the more I look at it, there's a lot not being considered.
Sure. And the problem with a lot of these kids is that the older they get, the more disturbing their behaviors are. And it's like having a 2-year-old on steroids. I mean, you can handle a 2-year-old's tantrums, but we have a child that has way more verbalization and they make threats and hit people and they're bigger and can really hurt people. They do pose a threat to everybody else.
So what, is looking at that, that can be scary. What is what you were talking about, breaking the cycle and looking for the child's needs to kind of quiet that whole hyper sensitivity, that hyperactivity? Is that the model that we need to be coming alongside our kids and working with them so it doesn't get to a scary place?
Yes. So I look at emotional needs, like there's 2 kinds of needs: physical needs, food, clothing, shelter, and then emotional needs, which I call the sticks without the letter K. So that's STICS. So the first need is safety. Many of these children did not grow up in a physically safe environment, but they also did not grow up in an emotionally safe environment where they can tell their caregivers, I don't like it when you fight. I don't like it when you have sex in front of me. I don't like it when I come home and there's no food in the house. The T is trust, which means can they trust their caregivers to be attuned to, anticipate, acknowledge, and appropriately meet their needs. The I is intimacy. Many of these kids have not been connected with in a meaningful way. They're maybe needing the emotional needs of the adults or just sort of throwaway children. I'm going to drop down, skip the C. The S is, the final S is self-esteem. How is a child supposed to feel about themselves when their caregivers that they were originally had did not care for them in an appropriate way? They're not going to come away from that feeling good about themselves. And so what they do is take control in the only way that makes sense for them. And different kids use different behavioral repertoires. Sometimes it's the same set, whether it's stealing, hoarding food, bullying, whatever it is. And then sometimes kids, when they perceive on and on that their needs aren't getting met, then they get worse and worse and use even more disturbing behavior.
Wendy is asking, how does she get a how do you get a diagnosis for RAD?
Where is Wendy?
When in the conversation or in the world?
No, in the world.
In the world. Wendy, I forget where you're coming to us from. I know you're on here a lot. I know you, Wendy. I just don't know where you're from. So I'll wait for her. There's a little bit of a buffer here, so I'll wait for her to tell us that. Erin had commented that her child has a diagnosis of RAD, but seems to make superficial attachments to everyone and everything. We struggle with boundaries. Is that normal for RAD?
Well, what's interesting about Erin's experience is that a lot of these children can be extremely charming in their interactions with other people, so other people never see that this child has disturbing as they really are. And it causes people like you or other parents of rad kids to be feeling as if they're nutso because people constantly question whether or not the kid really uses these behaviors. And yes, they are using these behaviors, and they're doing it as a survival mechanism, and they're 100% manipulative, and those behaviors have to be addressed. And I'm looking at what Wendy's saying about a child being diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD. I mean, those are all things that kids are diagnosed with, but unfortunately, you have to look at what's the underlying behaviors that they're using and how can we appropriately address that stuff to create an environment of relaxation and calmness so that the child can actually begin to heal. And sometimes when their behaviors are so aggressive, they're not able to do that in a home setting. They have to get stabilized out, somewhere else before they can begin to, whether that's through medication or something, to address that heightened state of anxiety.
So, Wendy?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wendy's saying she's in Michigan. So, Wendy, I don't know what the resources are there in Michigan, but what you are going to be looking for, from my perspective, is somebody who looks at reactive attachment disorder from a Christian perspective and has a treatment model that is going to help give you very specific word choices to use, very specific behavioral strategies that you can use to address and identify what the underlying needs are. And Darren can post my information. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you on the phone privately or to do some consultation to really help you and others in your position to be able to know exactly what you need to be doing. Because, again, so much of the information that you're going to get is going to be designed to address behaviors and not the underlying reasons for them.
And I do, for everyone that's watching, up in the original post, I do have Leigh Anne's website up there, builttobond.com. And I believe that does have your phone number on it and business address. So definitely check out her website. And again, like Leigh Anne was saying, if you need to talk with her more in private later, that she's a wealth of information. You're gonna be glad that you called her. So definitely give her a call after this if you need to discuss some things more. Christina said that they asked DCS to put their child that was struggling with RAD in another home or a lower level facility and let us have family therapy to work toward reunification in a safe way. After they said that, they changed their mind because they were getting pressure from foster care review board for permanency. He also had odd PTSD and ADHD.
I think she's saying oppositional.
Oh, yeah, yep, you're right.
Sorry, he might be acting odd, but I think that's what he's got.
Yeah. Oppositional defiant disorder. You're right.
Well, unfortunately, in a situation like this, sometimes a child needs a separate placement where he can calm down and, again, get on something, whether it's all natural, like a CBD oil or some other type of anxiety-reducing medication, and then you would structure a family plan where he can begin to have successful interactions with family members. I mean, Christina, I hate that for you. Unfortunately, not out of the norm, where a lot of times DPS will push families to make a commitment when the family's saying this is an unsafe thing right now. It doesn't mean that we don't love this child or that we're not committed. It's just that that's not a good solution for us.
So we're talking a lot about issues, and I know that kids that struggle with RAD, it can be difficult, it can be scary. Hey, Dusty, glad you could join us. What we talked about at the beginning, you were saying that you think that a family and a child can walk through this. What is the hope that you can give parents as they're walking through this? What is, because it can get scary when you're living with it.
Well, it's absolutely can be terrifying because terrified children will do terrifying things.
Right.
And I have a treatment model that is outlined in a workbook that can be purchased on the website, or you can call me directly. Two things have to happen. The parent has to really work on understanding what the underlying needs are and inducing a state of relaxation in the child. But the second part of that is that these children have to make a conscious decision to trust their grown up. If you think about birth children in good circumstances, they don't ever have to make that conscious decision because it's made before they have language, before they have no thought in the first few years of life. But unfortunately for these kids, what their brain has been trained to is deprivation, loss, people don't love me, people don't care for me, and so they'll go through life with this idea in their head that adults can't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes EMDR can help with that as a good treatment resource. If they have negative thoughts in their head, negative images of their abuse, that maybe they can work through some of that and open their heart to love. But again, as a Christian, I mean, you can provide people with the information about Jesus, but they have to decide, okay, I believe this and I accept it, and I'm going to have him be in my heart. These kids have to make the conscious choice that, okay, I've had trauma, I've had bad things happen to me, but I'm going to make a conscious choice to trust this person.
And that's something that we can't control. I think that's the hard.
Only the child can control that.
And I think that's what's hard. I know that's what's hard for me with a lot of things, is I want to be able to somehow help my kids to make that decision, but I can't. They have to do that.
And Wendy's asking this question about, is it bad when we're in a family therapy and he tells a lie and I look at him with a look and then he'll tell the truth but laugh through the conversation? I think, again, and this is something Wendy just probably needs to call me and we can talk through, but one of the things that happens is that these kids are in survival mode all the time. And so they're in a constant state of hyper-arousal where they're looking to make sure that they are seen in the best light. And until they feel comfortable and calm and less anxious, they're not going to be able to correct what it is that they're saying. I mean, they're going to make the parent out to be the worst person in the world because they see things in black and white. It's either I'm lovable or I'm foible, I'm flawed.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be able to make out that my parent is flawed because I can't be flawed. I have to be perfect, and they have to be the ones that are flawed.
Right. What, Erin, oh, I just lost it, Erin. Hold on a second. Let me get that back. She had an interesting question here. She's asking, can kids with RAD grow up to have normal-looking relationships?
Well, I would say maybe on the surface, but if you scratched a little bit beneath that, I don't know how they would appear to be normal, because they're going to be overwhelmed with a need for control. They're going to be using behaviors that are destined to gain control of themselves and the other person. I mean, if you've never achieved healthy attachment, you're not, I mean, you can play act at that for a long time, but pretty soon it's going to come out. I mean, you're not going to get your emotional needs met, and if you haven't gotten your emotional needs met, you're not going to be able to do that in other people.
So
and your relationship isn't going to be healthy because you don't know what healthy is.
So if kids that are with parents that can see the needs, they can interrupt that cycle of being hyperactive. Is there when they become adults, can they cope with their thought process and with their reactive attachment disorder?
Yes, and I'm going to use a different term. You're using the word hyperactive. I would say hyperarousal.
Okay.
These kids are forever watchful, wary, looking for anything that's going to be a threat to them. And they often perceive threats where threats don't exist.
Exactly. So what is that? So, but it is possible for them to go on and just have, like, say they're going off to college. Can they? I think maybe that might be what Aaron's getting at. Is there hope for them to go off to college and have a normal looking college experience, I guess, or a normal looking adult life?
Well, they may be able to function educationally. They may be able to function in a work environment. But relationships are the basis of any and all successful interactions with other people. And if they've never learned to do that, then, I mean, on the surface, they may look, quote unquote, normal, but they're still going to have lots of challenges because, again, their overriding hyperarousal and anxiety are going to cause them to perceive things in a way that isn't really accurate.
Correct. I just lost another one here. I'm telling you guys, I'm batting 1,000. Miranda says that she almost missed tonight, and she said she really needs help with talking about rad bad. So that's good. Glad to have you here, Miranda. Let us know if you have any questions or if you have anything you want us to talk about. Again, for those that are joining in, I see the numbers are keep going up. We have Leigh Anne Goldstine, who's the owner of Built to Bond Attachment Institute out of Knoxville, Tennessee, that's talking to us about reactive attachment disorder. So again, just like we do with every caregiver check-in, please ask us questions or share advice or comment. And be sure, everyone, while we still have about 20 minutes here as the conversation goes well, would you please go ahead and share that you're watching this on Facebook and let other people know, just so that we can help as many people as possible.
Can I respond to what Wendy said
absolutely.
about socially is the hardest he attacks people who truly love him?
Yes.
It's really, Wendy, what you have to understand is that he is such a frightened little boy inside, and relationships have not provided for him previously the comfort and relaxation that he needs. So, of course, he's going to push people away. And some of these kiddos, that's the only way that they know how to do to protect themselves, to push people away. Other people, we see this a lot with women particularly, but they're very clingy in their attachment styles. So they're hanging on to people. I recently had a family that came to me for family therapy to work with the children when it was really the mother who was having great difficulty because her history of trauma would cause her to unhealthily attach to other school families, and she was a divorced mother, so the children were spending 1 week with her and 1 week not with her. But in the week that the children were with her, he would take them to someone else's family from the time they got off the bus in the afternoon until the time they went to bed, because that's not what the children wanted, but it's what she needed. And she continued therapy abruptly when I was addressing that with her, because she didn't want to look at her own stuff. So when you ask me, can someone function healthily as an adult, I mean, this is a woman who has 4 children, and unfortunately, she's trying to get her needs met above those of her children.
And I don't know if you're seeing Miranda, who just chimed in. She just posted her comment on there saying, I'll just let everyone else catch up that might not be watching on Facebook right now. Miranda says that her oldest and her butt heads over everything. Her child purposefully makes loopholes to what I tell her to do to avoid doing what I told her. I'm having such a hard time being a good mom to her because she makes me so mad. I need to do better for her, but I don't know how to love her when she hates me so much.
Well, again, I would look at the model of Jesus. He loved us when we didn't love him. And so one of the things that I would recommend, and always do recommend, is that people pull out a photo or a series of photos of their child when they were in love with them, when they really did adore them. Stare at that photo and be able to use that to get them back to a place of loving kindness, where she's going to, for Miranda, where she has to be regulated in order to regulate this child. She's going to be able to make this child feel safe and comfortable if she's mad. I understand it. I was there with my now 21-year-old with Asperger's. I literally could not tolerate the fact that I knew he was breathing in my house. Even if I could hear him breathing, I knew he was breathing in the house. And that caused me to have heart palpitations and be very upset. And I was angry at him all the time. But once he confronted me about that, I knew I had to get back to a place of loving kindness with him. All of the other stuff you can work out later, but the first thing you have to do is get back into a place where you can be loving and kind with them.
And I think what you're talking about too, I think that first step, can be a doozy, because especially if as parents, if we've had to go through these situations for so long, and we don't even realize that we've let it get, our thought process get to there where we're so upset at our kids, or we're so disgusted with them. Like, the longer that goes on, the harder it is to turn the horse and buggy around to get back to square one where we adored them.
Right, and that's why I tell people all the time, for the people who were listening when I was drawing out or telling you about the little clock circle, at 9 o'clock, your first order of business is to induce a state of relaxation, because that's the only thing that leads to trust. If there's no relaxation, the child won't trust you. And Karen Purvis, who really is one of the founders of looking at how to approach these kids' attachment challenges from a Christian perspective, will tell you, you have to connect before you correct. And if you're focused on correcting what they're saying, correcting their viewpoint, correcting their perception, you're going to miss the boat. The first thing that you have to do is focus on how to connect with them. I mean, I tell people all the time, one of the things that I had to do, I recently dealt with pancreatic cancer, and the summer that I was down to 87 pounds and was in a terrible state, my son came home from college, and his first year of college, and had to watch every single episode of Sailor Moon, which is a Japanese anime. I can't stand Japanese anime, and it was in French with English subtitles. And so for the entire summer, where I'm trying to finish treatment, that's what I had to do. And did I hate every minute of it? Absolutely. Did you laugh about it now? Yes. Will I ever do it again? No. I did my job. I did what I needed to do to repair the relationship, and I'm never watching another Sailor episode as long as I live.
Oh, I don't think I could do it.
Well, I mean, as a parent, you know, like we say, you do what you have to do, and that's what spoke to him as the way I was going to fix things with him. I mean, do we have to do things that are unsafe? Absolutely not. Do we have to do things that are, you know, totally unacceptable? No. But this was something that for him, that's what he wanted from me, and so that's what I had to do.
Fantastic. I just to let everyone know that we are at 15 minutes till 9, so we are going to start wrapping up here after a little while. So I know everyone has questions, or from what the comments and everything I'm getting, everyone's interested in what Leigh Anne has to say. So why don't we get our last minute comments, because I know there's a buffer here from when I talk to when it actually shows up. So if you can get questions, comments in there, so that she can talk about some things and we can get wrapped up so I honor everyone's time, that'd be fantastic. Wendy says, as parents, we want to be in control. However, we aren't at times because we are human. And I think that's so true for us to remember all the time, that all of us are human, and that we're never going to do the right thing. It's funny because someone said something earlier, and I said, yeah, I do the right thing when I'm on my A game, but I'm not always on my A game.
Well, and I think the thing that's important for Wendy to know and for other people to know, all she has to be in control of is her own emotions and her own reaction. You don't have to be in control of the situation. The situation will often work itself out if you're in control of the way you're addressing things. And the other thing Wendy said is, I tell my kids I love you, we'll work no matter what. That goes back to what I said before about the kids being in a state of FFF. They're fussing, waiting for adults to figure it out and fix it. What Wendy's kids need to know, and all these other kids that are having attachment challenges, is the same thing that we would say to an infant child who's crying. Okay, I've fed you and you're still crying. I'm going to change your diaper. I'm going to go through the laundry list to see whatever it is I need to do to get you back to calmness. Whether that, you know, a lot of times with these kids, we underestimate the value of you're okay, and we try to come up with some huge thing that we can do that's going to all of a sudden make everything better, when sometimes it's just, come here, baby, let's just sit here, take a deep breath, we're going to get it figured out. You don't have to be so upset. Mom will try to figure this out. I may not have done the right things all the time, but I will be focused on trying to do what's best for all of us.
And I think just even what you said there is amazing, because it's not telling the child right there in the moment that you have it all figured out. Because I think for so many of us, this is new territory. It's and because it's unknown, it's scary. But we don't have to be dishonest with our kids or put on a facade that we do have it all together.
Well, it would be no different if your child got diagnosed with diabetes or another thing. I mean, you wouldn't know exactly what to do, but you'd say to the child, okay, we'll figure this out, right? I'll learn how to give you insulin shots, even though I absolutely hate needles, and the thought of that makes me want to puke. I'll figure it out.
Oh my goodness, yeah, needles not fun. What is something, I guess, and if anyone has any last minute questions or whatnot, I know sometimes we get stuff after after you guys have been able to process it a little bit. But if you have any last minute questions, let's go ahead and get those in. is there anything that you would tell foster and adoptive parents that are running into this issue, that maybe even with your son with Asperger's or different things, like what's something that you wish you would have known, or something that you think parents need to hear that they're not hearing?
Well, I use a lot of acronyms, and one acronym I use is TIF, which is This is Fixable. And again, I wouldn't be a Christian if I didn't believe that these things are fixable. The child has to be receptive, but the parent has to learn the right strategy to be able to be in control of themselves and to not be in control of the child, but they're in control of themselves, and they communicate to the child that I know what I'm doing here, and I'm going to help guide you to a place where you can feel better about yourself.
All right. Well, I think we are slowing down with conversation here. If you guys wouldn't mind, just as a round of applause, if you are still on here and watching, if you wouldn't mind hitting the heart emoji just as a round of applause for Leigh Anne. Thank you so much, Leigh Anne, for sticking with us tonight and helping us out. It's been great to have you here, actually. It's been phenomenal.
I missed you all.
We've missed you. It's been sad being out of Knoxville at times.
Hey, I meant to tell you, I know this is an aside, but I'm going to be in Orlando in June.
Yeah.
For my brother-in-law's retirement party, and so I thought there might be a way to connect up with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know.
It's
come
like
on.
that third weekend in June. I'll text you about it.
Yeah, come on down. Come on down. But I will tell you, everyone else that's watching, please go to Leigh Anne's website. I've posted it in the comments, and it's also on the main post, builttobond.com. That's built, and then the number 2, bond.com. Definitely go on there. She has a great DVD and workbook that's going to take you through some of the things that she was talking about. And also her phone number's on there and different things like that. And she can do some phone coaching, I assume, if you're not in the Knoxville area. There's so many different ways for you to connect with her and just to pick her brain and to get useful information from her and get your family healthily connected and attached. So,
hey, Darren,
yes.
Let me just add one
Absolutely.
more thing before I go. I don't know if y'all have a church affiliation there, but I'm doing some trainings in and around here. If that's something that you might look at for the Orlando area, some churches who might host that, let me know.
Yeah, give me some information on it, and yeah, we do actually. We have a group that I could talk to about that and see if they would like that.
Okay.
If you email it to me, so definitely.
Okay, well, it's that third week in June when I'm there, that third Saturday in June, the 22nd. So I could do something that morning.
Okay. After this, I'll text you my email address and get me some information on it.
Okay,
I'd be happy to.
Thank you for letting me talk tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I see there are all these heart emojis coming up. So thank you so much, Leigh Anne. Thank you, everyone, for joining with us. And I'm going to close this out. We're going to have next week, we have adult adoptee Betsy Crockett that's going to be joining us. And she's going to be just giving you guys some time to talk with her about her experiences, what helped her being raised, what didn't help her. And she'll share as much of her adoption story as she's comfortable with. But it's always great to pick the brains of adult adoptees. Also, in addition to Leigh Anne's stuff, which Leigh Anne's stuff is A+, but also take a look. We have a short introduction to attachment and attachment disorder by Colby Pierce. This is a book that we have reviewed on our website, and I will go ahead and put that link up on here so that you can take a look at that as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week. Monday Caregiver Check-In happens every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. Be sure to share this out to your friends and talk to them. We've got some great stuff coming up in store later on in the year, so I hope that you can hang with us and be a part of the journey. Thank you so much, you guys. Love you. Appreciate you. You guys are doing so much good in caring for kids you don't even know. Thank you so much. Bye.